Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Howard Birchman with Housing Innovations and have had the privilege of working with Rhode Island Housing and the Rhode Island Continuum of Care for a period of time at this point in time. So, and we've gone through several things. Usually it's the regular homeless assistance NOFA process, but HUD has added several additional NOFOs over the years. This one is CoC builds. We have been through this process now. This is the fourth funding round for the same amount of funds. Some of us have been highly successful, Charlie, in prior
Mhm.
rounds, but that they have. There's a new adage here that just succeeding in a NOFO competition does not necessarily guarantee that you get money from the NOFO competition. So, and then the competition right before this one was also unique in HUD history. They ran it like it was a talk radio sweepstakes. And if you were among the first 10 callers or the first 10 applicants to submit an application for HUD, you got funded. But that didn't fly either. So here comes the fourth round of the HUD COC builds NOFO. Um, some changes here. This part not really that much in the way of change. This is pretty similar to where it's been before. Remains permanent supportive housing, remains capital costs, remains that you have to spend 80% of the funds that you request for those capital costs, new construction, substantial rehabilitation, or acquisition. The remaining 20% of the funds can be used for anything eligible except for you can't use it for leasing, sponsor-based, or tenant-based rental assistance. Those funding categories are not allowed in the CoC Builds program. There is $100 million available in this competition, and of those, the first 35 million are basically targeted towards states with populations below 2.5 million, which happens to include Rhode Island. And in addition to that, there is a special provision that if you've got a single continuum of care in a state, you can apply for the maximum amount, which in this case is $12 million. So we got a priority towards the first 35 million and we can apply for up to 12 million. The continuum of care, basically HUD says each continuum of care can only submit one project unless there's an Indian tribe involved. Um, Basically, we've got to set deadlines, which we're going to talk about in the next slide in order to get this competition done. This competition is a little different than the prior one. There are some questions that they're asking of the applicants that really the CoC needs to provide support in responding to, and the CoC will provide support in responding to those ones that are basically broader than specifically to the project application. If there's more than one application submitted, then we would need to review it. We would use the same kind of scoring factors that we're going to discuss in a minute for scoring between the the multiple applications that we receive. If we don't receive multiple applications, basically we'll work with the submitted applicant to do everything that we can to make that the best possible application for funding. And then we've got to submit the CoC, like in the regular competition, submits that application directly to HUD by the HUD deadline, of course. The project applicants, anybody seeking the funds, they've got to go into the wonderful eSNAPS online portal HUD application thing. There are lots of detailed questions. Basically, we're going to go through the scoring factors, but you've got to write a narrative based on each one of those scoring factors that they have there. Then you've got to submit it to the CoC. We've got a deadline, which I'll tell. And then basically get selected by the CoC, submitted to HUD, get selected by HUD, not only get selected by HUD this time around, but actually get funded by HUD and get HUD willing to go into a contract and then um, have a continuum of care contract. And do all the normal reporting to HUD. So here is the timeline. So HUD issued this notification of funding opportunity on the 23rd of June. That would be a week ago today, I guess. The Rhode Island Continuum of Care issued a request for applications as quickly as possible on the 26th of June. Here we are on the 30th of June having a informational webinar. Um, we really need these applications to be submitted in eSNAPS. Remember that when you submit it in eSNAPS, it does not go to HUD. It just goes to the CoC, which reviews that first by the 15th of July at 12 p.m. because the final deadline for this thing is the 23rd of July, 1 month
Wow.
after HUD issued it, which is kind of quick in this process, and it's not like they're asking for nothing in terms of the response. You're not. So that's the timeline. We have no choice if we're going to meet the HUD deadline. And I think, oh, the other thing is because these funds have been around so long, if HUD does not obligate these funds by the 30th of September, they disappear back into the whatever OMB or whatever, but they're no longer available for this purpose. So they've got in theory, a very strong incentive to go through this whole process and select an applicant by the end of September. Okay, this is somewhat new. They really are prioritizing elderly persons, those who are over 62 and who have a disability. And of course, also we're going to meet the appropriate homeless definition for permanent supportive housing. So that's the main big focus on targeting towards elderly people. There's also a big focus on partnering with housing, healthcare, and supportive services organizations. They have language in there that they expect healthcare to be delivered on site or in close proximity to the site. So that is a significant factor for them in this competition, which is again pretty different from what the prior competition was. So in order to have a successful application to HUD, first, you've got to provide documentation of site control as part of the application. So you have to, if you are asking for funds for rehabilitation or new construction, you have to show that you own the site. If you're asking for funds to acquire, you have to have basically a sales contract in place in order to request these funds. Again, this has got to do with their timing deadline. They can't go to contract on something like this unless there's evidence of site control. They have to go to contract by September 30th. So they're not going to award any funds if the applicant does not have site control. Then these other factors are similar. In fact, they're easier. You've got to have experience and be able to write about your experience with a similar permanent supportive housing project serving the population that you're proposing to serve. Last time around, you need to show 4 similar projects. Now it's only 1. A similar thing about managing used to be 4 other ones now, but you want to show that you've managed at least 1 homeless project. They expect that you're going to have some other commitments in hand for the project, either tax credits, project-based rental assistance rather, some other state or local assistance is committed to the project when you apply to HUD. And then they've got this other thing is they would like to, this is back to the healthcare thing, that basically 20% of the cost that you're requesting of the award, so if you're asking for 12 million, that's what 2.4 in committed of coordinated healthcare or supportive services. Obviously, you've got to be able to stretch that over some period of time for a number as high as that. And then on top of it, there remains the match that is always part of the continuum of care. But again, if you're leveraging tax credits or something like that, the likelihood is that would apply towards your match requirement. So here I'll go as quickly as I can over these rating points. They're going to score these applications. Unmet need really is saying that it is either filling a specific gap in the continuum of care, or it's a part of the geography in the continuum of care that has no permanent supportive housing, or it's a program model. Their example is sober housing. So there, as an example of a model that might not be in the CoC. So you're meeting a gap that's not there, you're serving a part of the CoC that's otherwise not served by PSH, or it's a housing type that is not in there. Basically, if you have some quantitative measures that describe that gap, and the CoC does, especially on the elderly issue, I believe we do have some data that can be shared about the need for elderly housing. And 10 points, so 10 points if you can provide data that documents the need for it, that the unmet need that it's meeting, and then 10 points if you can describe how the project will meet that unmet need. Experience in leveraging as it is. Similar project is, oh, someone come back to me with that question. Or what is the question? There's not many of us here.
The question is, how likely do you think it is that they will make an award to a project serving domestic violence victims and not the senior population? Would that be a lift? So it's a great question, Suzanne. I don't think, Howard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have a hard yes or no answer for you. But the way that HUD's phrasing it is a preference to serve folks over age 62 with PSH. It's not a requirement. So it's certainly possible. And of course, category 4, which is fleeing domestic violence, is eligible population to serve in HUD housing. But I don't know. Howard, do you have any other insight to add on how they might score or think about the seniors and elderly angle that you just talked about?
Mm, we're there are additional factors, as we'll get to, in terms of meeting the needs of the elderly and aging population. They've got this overlay of coordinate. I mean, so you'd have to make the case as to why DV survivors would really need those on-site or close proximity access to healthcare services, which again is a big part of their orientation here. And then parenthetically, I'd say, HUD has provided DV bonus funds for quite a period of time. They've never allowed DV bonus funds to be applied toward a permanent supportive housing project. So I think the other thing to consider is HUD in their mindset, has not equated um, permanent supportive housing and the needs of survivors.
Well, other than they awarded it to our project that time, but that was a different HUD, sort of.
Yes. Yes.
I
Um,
mean, we did, just for the group, we did win this award on a DV proposed project, but we didn't win because we don't have the money, and obviously priorities have shifted. So is to say that they were open to it at the time, but
yeah.
may not be now.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't have this language about the preference for
No, they
That's
didn't.
correct. Yeah.
but thank you for
Yep.
clarifying that. Yes.
Yeah. So Suzanne, it's not really a complete answer for you, but that's our sort of best shot.
Then experience in leveraging, basically 3 of those points are experience in doing a similar project, 3 points for showing that you've leveraged things, and 4 points if you have basically commitments for tax credits or project-based rental assistance, 4 points for some other firm commitment. The basically the experience in managing is what you would imagine, showing that you've got experience both serving homeless people and the specific population you tend to serve. This sustainable thing has to do with the project as a plan to support ongoing costs with non-CoC funding. Full points will be awarded to applicants who can provide a specific timeline for transitioning away from CoC funds for renewable non-capital funded sources. So the extent to which you can demonstrate these elderly, formerly homeless, disabled seniors will be self-supporting without CoC resources. And
Howard,
basic,
can I ask a question on that? Because
yes,
that's new. That's kind of new too. Like
yeah,
previously, it allowed you to have a 5-year grant period, in which case, if you were asking for like a subsidy or operating support, as long as it was within the 5 years. So it's either, 4
oh yeah.
years or 3 years or 2 years, whatever, after it's built. They didn't ask you to say exactly what you would do at the end of that grant term or commit to not needing anything later. So now they're asking for a very deliberate plan that this is a time limited subsidy and there will be like a transition period to something else.
This is this theme that they have, this self-sustaining, where folks are going to be able to manage their housing without ongoing continuum of care support. I mean, they keep layering these things upon layering of them. Then they, want you to serve an elderly population. So yes, I mean, that's up to 6 of the points for that factor, the extent to which you can. Now you can, Charlie, of course, still ask for that 5-year term, and ask for those 3 years of support assistance as you're suggesting. But yet somehow in this narrative, you're either going to what? Transition them to Section 8. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that was my question. Is it more about the people becoming self-sustaining or the project becoming self-sustaining? Because I also saw language that said they really only want to do this for people that basically need forever support. Like they're so disabled or they're so whatever. that they cannot sustain themselves. Like, so that would be in conflict if it was the people. But if it's like, hey, we'll help you for 3 years, but then you need another path, that's the project. And that's what I was just trying to clarify.
So I think it's that well, what's their specific language? It's that it's ongoing operating costs with non-COC funds. So somehow the project itself can sustain itself without COC funds.
Okay. This is not like the people have to be independent after 3 years, kind of
Yeah,
what do we call it? You know what I'm talking about? Rapid rehousing. Sorry. All I could think of
right.
was RR.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Howard, correct me if I'm wrong, but Charlie, I'm not seeing any like the project rental assistance that you'd be eligible to apply for has no term. It's indefinite. Does that answer your question?
I don't know. Well,
It
maybe. No, I don't know.
that they say
Let me think
they
about
say it
that.
would be eligible for renewal.
Mhm.
It's or potentially eligible for renewal depending on whatever competition they would have 5 years from now.
Yeah, so it won't have a term, it won't have a 24-month limit like rapid rehousing does. But it's subject to renewal after this initial grant ends. It would be subject to renewal, which is never a guarantee.
Well, if you're going to get into it more, Howard, I won't. But so tell me, do you go into these sections in more depth, or is this because
No, go.
okay. Well, I guess, and I mean, I don't have the language in front of me because I just have your slide, but sustainable operating costs, that's what we're looking at, right? Yeah. Like without COC funds, do they just mean you're not going to ask for anything else? Or do they mean they want to stop providing subsidy to the project? Because operating cost is paid by rent, basically.
Hmm.
So if the subsidy is paying the operating cost, I was reading it as they really don't want to be involved after some amount of time and they want to show a transition plan to get off the COC dole, basically, the way they're looking at it, and onto something else, whatever that may be, versus just show that with our subsidy, you can pay the bills,
Yeah,
which is a totally different
yeah.
proposition, versus the people become independent, which is also a totally different proposition.
So, so it was choice A. They're looking for a timeline for this transition. So,
Okay.
and the transition being from COC funds supporting the operation of the project to COC funds no longer supporting project operations. That's the timeline, and the maximum points are going to be if you've got a timeline that can show that transition away from COC resources.
And there's no like guidance though on if that's within the 5 year grant period, or would you
No,
assume it
it
was
doesn't
within?
say
Okay.
that.
Okay.
It says,
Thanks.
but I think the narrative can speak to a timeline. And so the supportive services and healthcare coordination, which is a lot of points too, is basically saying that either 20% of your award is going to be spent on healthcare supportive services, which could be challenging if you want to use it for project-based rental assistance, or you're leveraging that value of 20% towards the of healthcare for the project, which
Oh,
can
so
be
there
used as
cannot
match.
be up, so there can't be um subsidies?
No, they can
Because
be.
the
What I'm saying, but I'm saying your project-based rental assistance is definitely eligible, but then you're not going to be spending the award on supportive services. You're going to be spending it on project-based rental assistance. So then you're going to have to leverage those 20% services, healthcare services from someplace else.
all right.
And the only other thing I want to just be sure is clear, Charlie, with your original question about rating factor E, is what Howard is talking about is for full points to be awarded. And so there's a world that your project would score partial points on that if it can't meet a
Yeah.
specific timeline for transitioning away from COC funds. What he's talking you through is the strategy that would position you to earn the most points under that rating criteria. I want to make sure that's
Yep.
clear, because we're not
Yep.
talking about like you can or can't do it. It's just
Yep.
a strategy to make it
Yep.
more, your application more competitive.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Absolutely. This next one, I think, is again not knowing your project, but they basically are saying healthcare must be provided on site or in close proximity. Um, so again, that's only, I mean, that's 3 points for that factor. So I mean, if there's a strong linkage with the community health center that's, you know, accessible, one would assume you'd get a good number of those 3 points. Um, then and then basically the needs the elderly and aging population. Basically, it's this is what CoC can help. We can describe the other projects that are assisting, aging populations in the community, and we certainly have data on that. Same thing about serving veterans. We just have the COCS to provide information on how it cooperates with the VA and identify a project in the COC that is serving veterans. I'm going to go come back to this building. I've got a fuller slide on this building safer communities, but the section 3 is basically providing employment and training opportunities to low income people.
Wait, for the veteran and the elderly, if
Yeah,
I remember right, while it can be this proposed project, it's
doesn't have to
any
be.
project in the system
Yep,
or
yep,
how effectively you can demonstrate the system is addressing it, essentially. The
exactly. Yep,
COC in
yep,
particular of the
yep,
system.
yep, exactly.
That's
Especially,
correct.
Okay.
So for any project applicants who are coming in, we'd just encourage you to be as clear as you can be about either your project or other projects you're aware of, maybe yours, maybe others in the COC. We would come in as the collaborative applicant after your submission and help you flesh out those rating factors that it says the COC can qualify you for, not just the project. So you're right. That's the veterans one. It's the elderly and
elderly.
aging
Yeah,
one. It's
yep,
the
yep,
building safe communities one.
yeah.
Can we then just, so you would like us to take a stab, let's say it's not our
Correct.
project. Let's just say we're
Mhm.
talking, I don't know why I'm off camera, hold on. But let's say
It's okay.
it's not our project and for one of those categories, we're relying on the system.
Hmm.
Can you would like us to take an attempt at answering how the system's doing it, although we don't have access to the same level of information you do about the system likely, but we take an attempt.
Yep.
And you, though, do believe that somehow the COC can put up enough evidence, essentially the best evidence we have of veterans and elderly within
Yes.
our current system. We have at least some examples of both.
Yes.
Okay.
So Charlie, you literally couldn't submit it to us if you don't put something in those narratives. So, if the project is meeting any of these, definitely make that clear. And then if you happen to be aware of any other projects, feel free to put that in. Otherwise, we will help with that after the initial submission.
Got it. Thanks.
But if
Yeah,
you have
it's a great question.
if any VA involvement in any of your projects, any HUD-VASH or anything like
Yeah.
that, it'd be great to
Sure.
reference that.
And do they care if it's out of state? Does it have to be limited to the COC? It probably does because it's this COC. But when it's our experience leveraging, or not leveraging, but yeah, I guess leveraging our particular organizational experience, we can reference. But for the purposes of these categories, it's only point scoring if it's within our Rhode Island COC system.
The way I read it is they're wondering about our Rhode Island COC, but if you have experience in Southern Mass with the VA for the agency
Mhm.
that's the project applicant, put it in there, and then we'll work on the narrative together after a project is selected with the chosen applicant to flush it out and make sure it's as strong as we can be. Great questions.
Okay. This next one, the building safe communities, again, these are very similar things that the CoC has to answer for the regular CoC NOFO process. This is the same kind of thing we are working on. I guess, again, Elizabeth is saying need to provide some kind of a response, but we certainly provide a lot of work um, to getting these things with what they consider to be a safe community on working with first responders, encampment issues, and decreasing public use, etc. And involuntary commitment stuff and good old sorda. So again, something you can fill in to have the e-snaps accept your application. And as I said, there are points for this. We've got to deal with this stuff in the CoC application if they ever make the CoC application available for us to complete. Um, so this is they've got these other preference points again. So Charlie, if you got the site, if it happens to be located in an opportunity zone, that's great. It would qualify you for those 2 points. It says it's 50% of the award is going to be expended in the opportunity zone. And then this is their ARP-IDE policy. And the CoC is going to have to develop this policy statement. Again, there are also 10. Oh, an opportunity zone, this is kind of HUD's favorite thing these days. Is designated areas where there are a variety of tax incentives to encourage investment in I don't know how they describe the communities where they want to encourage that investment. It used to be called blighted, in need of economic development. But there basically are designated zones in all states. And HUD has got again this next one about advancing recovery. This policy statement, you get the same 10 points on the CoC application. So we will be developing that policy statement to be sure that we get it for both applications. So as we said, this is it. Go into eSnaps, do the application, submit it to the CoC. These bullets are certainly areas where the Rhode Island Housing and the CoC can be supportive in rounding out the information. We've talked about the budget. It's 80 and 20, and those are things you can't ask for. And then just very, very quickly, just in case you haven't been in eSnaps in 2 years, since it hasn't been open to people in 2 years, um, remember you always start, that left-hand menu is how you get around to eSnaps. You always start in applicants, click that one. Then once you click that, it's going to open up a thing which is going to have that orange folder there. You always want to click on that orange folder and check. Really important that the primary contact and the secondary contact remain the right contacts for your organization, because if HUD has a deficiency that can be cured, they're going to send you an email and you've got 5 days to cure it. So you want to make sure you get that email. When you're in the applicant profile, this is the last screen, the submission summary. When you open it up, it's going to say this thing has been, is locked, it's been submitted. You have to go to the screen 7 and click on that edit button on the bottom there to open up the screens to make any editing. If you haven't been in for a while, there is this screen on indirect cost information that you might not have previously completed because it's a relatively new screen in eSnaps. So you'll have to complete that before you'll have a complete applicant profile. Then once you've done the applicant profile, remember in eSnaps, you always go down that left-hand menu. It's never very clearly buttons, but those are buttons. Click on that funding opportunity registration. It should show that CoC builds project application at the top of the screen. All you've got to do is click where that check mark is. Basically, once you do that, it'll say, do you want to register? You say yes, and you go back to here. Then you go to that projects thing. Once you click on projects, you want to go to the center of the thing where it says funding opportunity name and filter for the CoC builds project application. And we'll send out these slides as a maybe a helpful tutorial. Just click on that. There should be no records found because you haven't started an application yet, in which case you click on that plus sign there, and it will then ask you to name your project, whatever. CoC builds 226 would be good to put in there. Anything else is your choice. Um, And then once you have named the project, you go down to the final thing, the submissions thing. You go to that center thing where it's applicant project name, and you filter for the name of the project that you just named. And once it shows up on that, you click on the orange folder for that, and you're into the project application. As in prior eSnaps things, there are a whole number of screens that you've got to complete before it actually opens up the project application for you. So don't worry, you won't get to see the project application until you do all the required certifications, and then you can see it. As I said, you're going to be asked to do a narrative on each one of those rating factors. The one for safe communities requires several narratives to it. And as I said, if the site control is either going to be a deed or a lease, if you're new construction or rehabilitation, and a purchase agreement if you're asking for acquisition. Pay attention to these. First, the 2991, the consistency with the common plan, they've given you a really narrow window, so it has to be, before, basically, it's got to be signed between now and the deadline of July the 23rd. It's crazy. They only gave a month for that. Um, Normally, these things, the code of conduct, the nonprofit documentation, normally you don't need to include these, but they did this before because they're going to try to rush the processing. They want you to actually put your 501c3. And if you've got easy access to your code of conduct, just attach that as well. Always, it's been, if it's on file with HUD, you're fine. But it seems to me that eSnaps is not going to accept the application as complete without that attachment. And then
Is that
finally,
attachment provided by them? Like, is that a form?
no, the code of conduct.
Yeah.
Um, Charlie, if you all
I
have
do.
got any HUD contracts, you've got a code of conduct on file with HUD. If you Google HUD code of conduct, there is a thing called the code of conduct e-library, um, and which is like an Excel form that it has every friggin' nonprofit that's
I'll
supposed to
put it in
control.
the chat for us.
Okay.
It takes a long time to download the darn thing. So if WDC is there, I think you can probably download it from there and just attach it to your to your application. If not, there is also a HUD code of conduct landing page which tells you exactly what information you need to have in your code of conduct. And you just have to basically transfer that to your letterhead and submit it to HUD or attach it to this application. But there's sort of an indication that eSnaps might not accept it as complete without that there. And then the other one is that commitment from some sort of healthcare provider to do that 20%. Okay, that's helpful because when you download it from HUD, really you think, is this what's going on? So there is they're providing a lot fewer resources than they used to provide, and when they provide them, they're full of editorializing as well as helpful resources. Um, and so this is what they're putting up available on their official competition web pages. There is, however, these detailed instructions. So if you're going to do an application, very much click through, download those detailed instructions. In most of the time, they're just kind of parroting back what was already said, but you really want to follow them. That they are helpful. And there are some frequently asked questions. As I said, it's a mixture of information and other than information. And that's it. So
Hmm.
thank you.
Thanks, Howard. It looks like we had a question about the opportunity zone. What is it? Can you talk a little bit about that form?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. There is indeed a HUD form, that certification for the opportunity zone. And I'm sorry, do we, you can again, just by, Googling, opportunity zones, Rhode Island, get a listing of all areas in the state that are considered to be opportunity zones.
Thank you.
Oh,
It's a great
and
question.
here's a link.
Get you.
Okay.
Any other general questions on the opportunity or any of the requirements Howard has gone through or any of the eSNAPs elements?
In the slide about the points, it's down at the bottom, it said section 3.
Yeah.
What is that?
Section 3 basically has to do with employment of low income and otherwise economically disadvantaged people, I think, and businesses as part of the project.
So Jill, many HUD awards bring Section 3 requirements with them. So I'm just going to pop a
Yeah.
link about
Yeah.
Section 3 into the chat for you, and then I think it'll walk you through the particulars.
So it's, I'm sorry, and the specific language
Thank
is
you.
provide employment and training opportunities for low and very low income persons, as well as contracting and other economic opportunities for businesses that provide economic opportunities to low and very low income people. So
And it's
employment and training.
basically, because you can't do it, it's not about your current organization, right? It's about what money gets spent on the project. So like between a contractor all the way, possibly, I don't know if it applies to frontline type staff or not, because I haven't, but normally in a construction setting, it's like a lot of it is, are any of the subcontractors employing or are you employing? Right? But they're not asking you to prove that about your own workforce. The problem is most people exceed that income by the time they're employed,
In construction.
gainful, so then it will like kind of, anyway, like it's a hard needle to thread.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty low.
there's a pretty solid overview right on that HUD Exchange link, Jill, that I sent you. So afterwards you can review it and reach out to us if you have any other questions. Or
Okay.
Sarah, I guess, this person to reach out to if you have any other questions about it.
Sarah's my buddy.
Hey, she's my buddy.
She's all of our buddies.
Sarah, come on.
Any other general questions about the opportunity? We definitely are going to create space to talk through particular projects, but we wanted to just make sure any general questions get answered
I'm
first.
kind of curious. I understand they have a September 30th deadline is that to enter the contract?
It's to
Yes.
obligate the funds.
To
So
obligate the
yes,
funds.
so they should issue contracts with the awardees before September 30th.
And then if it's the same, or if I understand it from last time, which it was a little confusing to me last time, but essentially, do you still have the 5-year grant period
Yeah,
that you can
yes.
do whatever in?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And like if you had a very fast moving construction, let's say it was 1 year, you could build something, operate it for 4 years, like that would be within your 5, right?
Yep,
If you had a very
yep.
slow moving thing, you might,
But
was
of
gonna
course
ask.
the operating gets diluted because it's the same 20% that's spread over more years. Remember, that's always the gamble, the thing you work with these funds, because those 20% of the funds are potentially renewable. So if you ask for a shorter term, you could get more money per year.
Mhm.
And in theory, it would renew.
Yeah.
Because you're capped
Um,
at that 20% of your total award for expenses like operating or services. So if you put your award into 2 or 3 years, that 20% is only stretched over 2 or 3 years. Whereas
Mhm.
if it's 5, you just have less to spend on average over the 5 years. It could work for your project, but it's just,
Yeah. And
it's not always the most helpful to stretch it out to the longest grant term. It just depends on what you're looking to fund.
So it didn't change from the last one, that part. That's the same. I mean, that seems to be how they're doing. And then I guess my actual question was going to be about if they are obligating funds by the 30th, is there any sense of when does that mean the funds are available? Like what's the kind of after that to get access to the funds kind of part?
so
Go ahead, Howard. Sorry.
and Charlie, as there was that last time, they've got that subsidy review that Rhode Island Housing, I guess, has to do, and they do that layering review. So there are some other analyses that have to happen before they can. And of course, I don't know where you are in terms of environmental stuff, because obviously it's a capital project and you can't spend capital funds without whatever level of environmental review being completed.
But it's like relatively fast. Like there's some processes, but it also, and then did you say there's an expectation of you gave a time, like you have to do something within 24 months, or you have to, what was that? I forgot what you said. Or am I making that up? Maybe not.
That-
Do you have to
that
do you have to kind of
Howard's-
deploy funds within a certain amount of time or anything like that? Or you just get, if you say 5 years, I'm gonna get it all in five, do whatever in 5 years, that's fine. It's within your term. I'm not saying I'm gonna do that, but I'm just
Ye-
asking.
the, Charlie, there are some timeliness things in terms of expenditure. I have to check the NOFO on that, but again, the expectation is fine. I mean, it's for capital funds, so the expectation is you will draw down on those capital funds relatively soon,
Mhm.
um, after you've signed the contract with HUD. As I said, it's really, I think it's going to be your environmental review is. Go ahead.
And I'll just add, I think, Howard, when you were talking about the scoring, there is some scoring around implementation schedule. And Charlie, that might be
Yeah.
what's in your
Maybe.
what you heard, but there's points related to the likelihood of the project being ready for occupancy within 36 months. But
That's
again,
what it
that's
was. Okay.
points
Yeah.
related, not threshold requirement for
That, I think that is what it was. I was trying to remember the 36 months. So that's, so occupancy in 36 months is the goal, basically.
for full points. Yeah, they
Mhm.
say the culmination of full points is likelihood that it'll be ready for occupancy within 36 months. Yeah.
Okay. If there's, since this is actually going in e-snaps versus when we did this, years and years ago, and it was like a paper, I mean, not paper, I guess it was an email or something, but a kind of a paper
Mhm.
submission locally. And then it went in, I think, was it not e-snaps?
I think it was
Somehow.
grants.gov, one of these two.
Originally it was grants.gov. The last one you did was an eSnaps though.
Okay, but it was incredibly glitchy, right? And glitchy before we got it to you all, and maybe even glitchy after you all had it in your hands. So that's one thing. And I guess I'm just wondering, given that there might be multiple applications, and I realize you can't be like conflicted on, pushing one or the other, but if there are like technical or glitchy things that are seriously in the way, is there a Howard or somebody a resource to push that over the edge there? Because that was like bad, really bad.
Yeah. So eSnaps can be tricky for people to use and to submit. Uh, absolutely. So we would strongly encourage anyone who's applying not to wait until the last minute. And so to do the steps that Howard walked you through to create your applicant profile if needed, to start working in the application, save it as you're working on it, and I don't remember all the details of the glitches that you've experienced, Charlie, but I think if you're having trouble at any of those steps, let us know.
Yeah.
And there are emails in the NOFO about if you have an eSnaps problem, like who to officially contact for eSnaps, but there are probably a number of things that we can help you with if you're getting little red error messages at the bottom of your screen in eSnaps. So I don't remember. I don't know
Well,
exactly
you might
what
remember it
glitches you're talking.
deleted my entire application about 5 times, and we had to start over every day. Might remember that. That was really bad
Yeah.
before we could get it to you. So anyway, I hopefully that doesn't happen again, but essentially to have a PDF copy and re-enter every single thing starting
Yeah.
days before. So
Yeah. So I would strongly encourage you to save it and to export your application regularly to PDF. And you do that on that submission summary screen. Howard, did you have one of those screens on your slides that you can put back up real
No,
quick
I
for me?
didn't, but I can.
Oh, I thought you did where you did maybe on the applicant profile is what I'm thinking of, not the project, but that's okay. So it's on the submission summary screen, and it says export to PDF. And I would suggest doing that like a few times a day while you're working on it. And if it ever, and that timestamps your application. So because we have this local deadline first, we have some time put in to cushion if we can see evidence that your project is complete with that timestamp, but you, for whatever reason, have a glitch and can't get it to us. Let, you know, we would work with a project applicant on that. The issue is we have to submit these project applications to HUD by HUD's deadline. And so we will have to figure out every glitch locally and get it submitted because there is no wiggle room with HUD. I will say that the type of technical glitch you just described is rare. We receive project applications for the regular competition routinely in eSnaps. So I am hopeful it's not like a builds glitch that we see again, Charlie, and that it's been navigated in the system. But let's
It-
keep in close touch about it if you're seeing anything concerning as you're going to submit.
And if something like that happens again, try a different browser. I know
Yeah.
eSnaps can sometimes like some browsers more than others. So
I
if
always do
you're,
eSnaps on Chrome. That's the one that works best for me. I don't know about you, Howard. But
Since Howard is neutral, I think, I mean, that, and Sarah, that are there, can we ask questions of them after this meeting, or is this it?
we are all going to stay on and we are all going to be able to answer your project specific questions. I just
Well, I
wanted
just
us to
meant
get
as we
through
go,
the,
I guess, but yeah, that too.
yeah, so
but-
all questions have to go to Sarah St. Laurent directly in writing, and know that we have a team of folks that will help get you answers to any of your questions. And you're looking at all of them right now.
Mm.
But Charlie, all the questions need to go through Sarah's email, Sarah
Got it.
St. Laurent's email.
so they could be shared with any other
Yeah.
possible applicant.
Exactly. Thank you, Howard.
Thanks.
These are great questions. And let's just keep our fingers and toes crossed for no glitches like that, Charlie. That
I'm
was
just a little
horrible.
traumatized, to be honest.
Ye-
I mean,
well,
fair enough. Fair
Here I'm
enough.
sitting here 1 year later in the same seat, like,
Yeah,
feeling
I,
it.
now that you brought it up, I remember that
And there
happening.
is
Very,
like, we are very happy to, as soon as a project applicant submits their project in eSnaps to us, RI 500 in eSnaps, feel free to email Sarah and ask for confirmation that it's been received, because one thing eSnaps does not do is email alert anyone about submissions. So that is very easy for us to do for you, is to log in, check, make sure we've received the application, and then we can provide you that confirmation in writing to ease your concern too. Great questions. Any other ones about the content? Okay. Well, to the extent you are interested, Melanie, my colleague in the development department, is here. Thank you, Melanie, for your time. And so we're happy to also take questions around particular projects you might be considering. And Melanie's here to lend her expertise in any way she can around navigating the requirements of the builds funding. So I'm not sure if anyone has specific questions they want to ask here, or of course you can always email Sarah, but we wanted to provide you the opportunity. And Howard, I think we can go ahead and end the recording, and then we'll just keep track